They go up to the mic too. If they're gonna go talk, you need to ask them what their name is so I can mark it down.
Name and from where they're from,
Yeah.
or just name and which app, oh, they'll be on the whatever. Okay. Okay. Good morning and welcome to our Township of Whitewater Region Committee of Adjustment meeting for November 21st. Do we have any disclosures of interest? Okay, so the first, we'll have our public meetings now. And the first one is a minor variance application D13-156 and D13-156, November 2024. Recommendation that the,
I'm sorry to choking.
oh, choking on my watch, that the Committee of Adjustment approve a minor variance application for the property known municipally as 867 Fott Road, granting relief from sections 3.33F of the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw 2401-1655 to reduce the minimum water setback from 30 meters to 22 meters to allow for the erection of 4 bunkies. And now I'll ask Planner Alex to, oops,
You need
a mover. Oh, can I have a mover, please? All right. And if Planner Alex would like to,
Great. Thank you very much. So the present application was submitted to, by Dean Fott for the property known municipally as 867 Fott Road. As was mentioned, the reason for the variance, the requested variance, is to allow for 4 unserviced prefabricated bunkies to be placed on the same location as what once had been a lodge. The lodge was deemed unfit for use. So the site, the context is the lot is a 96.2 acre lot that's divided by the Algonquin Trail. On the east side of the property is a campground which borders Muskrat Lake, and then west of the trail is woodland and brush. And then surrounding the lot are residential uses, agricultural uses, as well as forest and Muskrat Lake. So when considering this application, I have some legal obligations as well as some policies that need to be reviewed. So the policies that were reviewed for the application were the provincial policy statement, which supports development that is compatible with the rural character of the area, as well as sustains local services, which this application meets. For the official plan, it designates this area as a waterfront exceptions number 2 for Muskrat Lake. The official plan also outlines a 30-meter minimum water setback from all water bodies in the area. So this is why we're here today, is to discuss this. And then the zoning bylaw also specifies a 30-meter setback from water. And so the present application is to reduce that the zoning requirement from 30 meters to 22 meters. So the law requires me to assess the application against 4 questions. The first question asks if the intent of the official plan is maintained, and the answer is yes. The official plan allows for varied and low impact redevelopment. The next question is, has the zoning bylaw intent been maintained? The response to the question would be yes. While the setbacks are there to ensure riparian, is there to serve as a buffer for flooding and to also allow for a riparian zone to exist along the water body. The requested variance is quite minor in nature, so that is fine. And then as the next question is the variance minor in nature? And the response is yes. The structures will be placed on the same location as the former lodge. It does constitute 150 square meter expansion from the former lodge in terms of overall footprint, but we don't anticipate any sort of negative effects from that. And then the last question is this variance desirable for the appropriate use of land? And the response is yes. So we're not departing from the previous use. We're just kind of shaping the way it was before in a new way. So instead of one lodge, we're now going to have 4 smaller structures, but they're unserviced, and intended for sleeping essentially. So yeah, so in terms of community consultation, this application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act, and no objections were received. In terms of financial impact for the municipality, the property may be reassessed at a higher value by MPAC. And so my recommendation is that you approve this request for the variance. And if you do so, then the next steps would be to issue a decision notice in the next 10 days.
Thank you. Do we have anyone in the audience who would like to address this minor variance? Is there anyone online?
Tyler is for not this one, right?
No, that's Tyler is the next. Yeah.
So no, I see not.
Okay, I see no one. And council, does council have any questions or concerns regarding this?
No comment. I fully support the recommendation.
Thank you. Okay, I'll call for a vote now. Everyone in favor? And carried. Great. All right, the second application of consent is file D10-239 Lot 1 and D10-240 Lot 2. The recommendation is that the Committee of Adjustment for the Township of Whitewater Region approve 2 consent applications for the property described as part of Lot 22, Westmeath Concession A EML, Beachburg Road, subject to the conditions outlined in this report. May I have a mover? And we'll have Planner Alex discuss this one.
Great, thank you. So these applications for severances for consents to sever were submitted by Tyler Wilson. And the subject property is located on Beachburg Road. So the request is to create 2 new lots for residential purposes. Both lots will have approximately 47 meters of frontage on a county road, will be a depth of 91 meters and represent an area of about 0.43 of a hectare each lot. The retained lands would be a 12 hectare lot, and it consists of primarily woodlands and some fields. And the retained lands will remain undeveloped for now, which is going to be preserving the natural character and the rural characteristics of the area. Surrounding the proposed lots are the lands that are used for primarily residential purposes as well as agricultural purposes, and there's also some vacant woodlands. As I had mentioned earlier, the severed lands will consist primarily of woodlands, whereas the retained land will have both woodlands and some fields as well. All lots that are created from these applications will have access onto the county road and will require entrance permits. In terms of servicing, the proposed servicing is individual on-site well and sewage services. So again, I reviewed the provincial policy statement, the official plan, and the zoning bylaw to ensure conformity. The provincial policy statement supports rural development that enhances rural character, and it also is in support of creating lots that where the site conditions are appropriate for private servicing, and where the minimum distance separation from other agricultural uses can be respected. And the policy also wants to ensure that when we're creating or when permitting development, that there's no significant impact to wildlife. So I will address, in terms of the rural character, the applications conform, and I'll address the MDS, the private servicing, and the wildlife in just a moment. So the County of Renfrew official plan designates this area as rural, which supports a low density residential uses, including single detached dwellings, which is what we envision for these lots. The county also has a servicing policy, which allows for individual on-site systems where communal systems are not feasible. The county OP also has a section related to natural heritage, which was considered here. So the severed and retained parcels are both have designated, are both designated as significant woodlands, and therefore an environmental impact study was conducted, and the results, the study suggested that there will be no negative impacts to the ecological function of the woodlands, and the recommendations of the study are a part of the conditions for this report. And then in terms of land division, so this constitutes the fourth and fifth severance off this parcel. So the OP requires that several conditions be met, including related to compatibility of uses, no demand for increased services, that these severances represent the completion of the development of holding by way of consent, that ribbon development is not a concern, and that the lots are adequately sized for private well, water and sewage system. So in my opinion, all of these conditions are met as long as the conditions of that I set in this report are abided by. In terms of the comprehensive zoning bylaw, the subject property is zoned rural, which does permit residential uses. In terms of lot size, both lots meet the minimum size requirements, and as well as the frontage requirements. All lots, not just the severed ones, but all lots. And in terms of MDS, both the severed and the retained parcels met the setback conditions for the MDS. So the rationale for permitting this severance to move forward is that the intended use is compatible with the rural character of the area. The environmental servicing considerations have been addressed through the studies, and there are conditions in this report that will will address any concerns that were raised. And then the retained lands will remain largely natural, preserving the woodlands and maintaining, again, the rural landscape. And again, any sort of the main issue with the hydrogeological study, which is will be addressed here. So the conditions that I'm putting on that I'm proposing are that the applicant provides 2 hard copies and 1 digital copy of a plan of survey to the Secretary Treasurer, that they provide 1 digital copy to the County of Renfrew, that they obtain favorable comments from the county around the road entrance, that they register lot 2 first, and then lot 1, that they provide us with a transfer deed, and then that they enter into a development agreement where all of the recommendations of the environmental impact study would be registered, as well as 2 conditions, one condition. So to implement the recommendations of the environmental impact and the hydrogeological study, but to also specify that a tertiary septic system is required for any development on this lot in the future. In terms of public engagement. The notice was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act and no comments were received. Following the approval of these severance applications, the properties will be assessed or reassessed, and that may create will create more tax revenue for the township. So the recommendation is that that these applications be approved subject to the conditions that I've outlined. And the next steps would be to issue a notice of decision, and that's it. That's the next position or the next steps.
Thank you, planner. Anyone in the audience would like to address this issue? Anyone online? Okay, Tyler, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, you can go ahead, please.
Okay, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to say, but I support this, and I agree with all of the terms and conditions, and most of which I have in place. The survey I have all the copies, and the remaining parts I can make happen.
All right, thank you.
This,
Does council have any questions or concerns?
Yeah, I just one question, planner. So what's the difference between a tertiary septic system versus a regular septic system?
So I'm not an expert in septics, and it would be awesome if Doug was here because he would probably be able to explain this very thoroughly. But essentially, the size, because the lots are not meeting that 1 hectare size, we just need an extra level of filtering before we kind of let the
So the tertiary then conforms to a smaller lot.
Yeah, so the recommendation for a tertiary comes from the fact that the nitrate, the calculations around the amount of nitrate that would be released from the property potentially was based on the full 13 hectares, which of course it would pass. But since we're concerned about a potential development on a less than 1 hectare lot, it was a recommendation from the CBO and myself that a tertiary system be installed. It's just, we just want to avoid any sort of issues. Like, as you can see, there's an increasing lot fabric there. And when you have more people living close to each other on private systems, there's a point at which we need to be taking extra steps to ensure health and safety.
So do we know, does a tertiary system have a septic tank with it or not?
It's my understanding that they do have it's my understanding is that it's basically a regular septic system with an additional component on it, but I didn't maybe.
Yeah, so I think just to answer that question, I think it has a tank, and the system as a whole is sort of a unit, and it's a filter that removes the phosphorus and the nitrates from leaving the tank as the effluent. The complexity is that the filters need to be replaced, and it's common practice that these systems be inspected annually. So
so it still has a tank that needs to be pumped every so often, et cetera.
yes,
Okay,
as I understand it, yeah.
Okay.
And if I could, just on the basis of the first question, because for our community and all the communities where severances are occurring, the common practice, the change that we've seen from 1 acre, we've always seen 1 acre was good enough, to the 1 hectare, which is 2.5 acres. It's primarily this. So what happens is the province has established criteria of the effluent leaving your property from your weeping bed to the property line, and it's a nitrate level. It's 10 milligrams per liter is the maximum nitrate level that could be leaving your property, because it could affect other properties. And in the calculation, they could not meet that upset limit. They were greater than 10 milligrams a liter. So the tertiary system allows them to get below that number.
Nice.
The thing that I put back to staff is the filter replacement and the annual inspection. We need, if we're going to continue to allow these in our community, a framework to ensure the inspections are occurring and to ensure the filters are being replaced, because otherwise the system fails. So if this continues, I spoke with our CBO, is and with our planner is what does that framework look like?
So is that potential creation of a new bylaw then?
Yeah, likely, yes. And, there's resources that need to be attributed to that, right? To ensure that we're reviewing the reports and
Fair
the
enough.
like. So there's probably not more than 5 systems that currently exist in the community. So it's not we're not viewing it as a risk or a hazard. But there are other properties who've done assessments similar to this that are suggesting that we go to that type of system. Yeah.
Right.
So that framework would come back to council through some type of policy to be adopted by council. And then we would advise council what is the impact to the human and financial resources of the township to be able to meet that need. And, once we see a trend where they're switching to smaller lots with these systems, well, then we have to put something in place or just refuse them to be allowed, which probably not the right approach, but I think we'd be better to put a program in place.
So could that be dovetailed into that new sewer use potential bylaw that?
Maybe not the sewer use, but what I think it could be dovetailed into is a voluntary septic reinspection program. So one of the recommendations out of the official plan with the Muskrat Lake was for the township to consider a program where we do voluntary reinspections. So I think that we need to keep the septic together. Sewer use would be specific to the municipal sewer system.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you for asking that question. I was also curious. I guess I have one question that only applies to the 2 smaller lots, not the retained land, correct?
Correct.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Planner, who is responsible for the inspections if it's,
It would be Doug, the CBO.
oh, okay.
Yeah. So Doug and I briefly spoke about how we would start tracking this. And so we had very briefly discussed just starting up an Excel sheet tracking when the system was installed and then setting the date for when it would need to be inspected. Doug, because of the relatively few that exist at this moment, Doug was not concerned at all. And then there was another reason. He said that even if there was more, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he did not leave me with the impression that even if there was more, that this would be a concern for him.
Thank you. All right. So we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And carried. All right. The next one is consent application file number D10243. Recommendation is the Committee of Adjustment for the Township of Whitewater Region approve the consent application for the properties described as part of Lot 15, Westmeath Concession 8 EML, 1539 Hawthorne Road, subject to the conditions outlined in this report. May I have a mover, please?
Sorry, we missed one.
Did I use the wrong one? Oops, I did 3.4. Sorry. Okay, let's start over. Application of consent D file number D10241 and D10242 that the Committee of Adjustment for the Township of Whitewater Region approved 2 consent applications for the properties described as part of Lot 6, Westmeath Concession 3ML, Papin Road, subject to the conditions outlined in this report. May I have a mover? All right, and Planner Alex, your turn.
Thank you very much. So the present application was submitted by Laura Miley and Stephen Harding. And the request is for consent to create 2 new lots for residential purposes on Papin Road. The lots will both have 92 meters of frontage and a depth of 110 meters and will amount to 1 hectare each. The retained lands will amount to would amount to 33.7 hectares and are consistent of primarily agricultural fields, brush, and there's, the woodlot at the northern end and some wetlands on the southern end of the retained lands. And the severed parcels are primarily woodlands. So in terms of access and servicing, all parcels will front onto a municipal roadway and will require entrance permits. And individual on-site water and sewage systems are what are anticipated for these lots. Again, so we have the policies. So the provincial policy statement, as I mentioned before, supports rural development of rural areas that are amenable to the rural character and can be supported by services. And also there needs to be development that doesn't have a negative impact on environmental features and wildlife habitat. The present application is meets these conditions in terms of the official plan. The land use designation is rural, which permits low density residential uses, including single detached dwellings, which is what's being proposed. In terms of natural heritage, the official plan identifies several natural features on the property, so wetlands, woodlands, and wildlife habitats. But those are confined primarily to the retained lands. So an EIS study was not required for this application as the lots were considered, well, the location of the lots is not considered to negatively affect any of the environmental features. The official plan has highlights that there's a concern for wildland fire or a risk for wildland fire in that area. The applicant did do an assessment, and their assessment was determined to be moderate. So no further action is required at this time. This application will again represent the fourth and fifth severances from the original holding. So again, we're required to ensure that those conditions are met by the official plan. And in this case, there's no concern. So there's no, as I am not concerned about incompatibility between abutting uses. I don't anticipate any demand for increased municipal services. The completion of this development will represent the completion of the development potential of the holding without a plan of subdivision. Ribbon development is not a concern in this area, and the lots are adequately sized for the provision of private services. In the comprehensive zoning bylaw, the location is zoned rural, which does permit residential uses on a lot of this size. And in the retained, but some areas of the retained land are also zoned environmental protection, but nothing is being proposed in that area at this time. So in terms of lot size and access, both lots are suitably sized and will have and meet the requirements for road frontage. And in terms of MDS minimum distance calculations for agricultural uses, so the punchline is it meets the MDS. Normally, we used a specific condition in the MDS calculation because there are already existing residential non-agricultural uses around the lot. When we originally calculated the MDS, the lots would not have met the MDS, but because there's already other uses happening, we are permitted within the MDS to find out which one is the closest 4 lots that are not residential or that are not agricultural, pardon me. We can take the distance of the farthest one and set that as the minimum distance separation. And that's what we've done in this case. So the minimum distance separation is 332 meters. So that will, and we're good on that. So Yeah, so the rationale for supporting this application is that the intended residential uses are consistent with the rural character of the area. And there won't be no environmental impacts are anticipated, and servicing levels will not be affected negatively. Because the retained lands are going to maintain the agricultural function and their natural heritage features, and the wetlands are also being preserved on the retained land. So this is a good thing. And then in terms of future development, as I mentioned earlier, any further severances on this parcel will need to be done through a plan of subdivision. So the the conditions that I am putting forward for these applications are similar to the last one, which is to provide 2 hard copies and 1 digital copy of the survey to the Secretary Treasurer, 1 digital copy to the county. So we're wanting the applicant to ensure that the right-of-way is at least 20 meters. And if not, that they transfer that land to the township. And we would like that lot 2 be registered before lot 1, similar to the previous application, and that the applicant provides a transfer deed to us. Engagement, the application was circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. No concerns were received at the time of writing this report. In terms of financial implications, the new lots will represent new tax revenue for the township. And so my recommendation is that these applications be approved, subject to the conditions I've outlined. And if the application is approved, the next step is to issue a notice of decision.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience who would like to address this matter? Anyone online? All right. Would you, does council have any questions or concerns?
I have no comments. Thank you.
All right, we'll call for a vote. All in favor? And carried. All right, we'll go to the last one now for today. Application of consent file number D10243. That the Committee of Adjustment for the Township of Whitewater Region approved the consent application for the properties described as part of Lot 15, Westmeath Concession 8 EML 1539 Hawthorne Road, subject to the conditions outlined in this report. May I have a mover? And Planner Alex, you're up.
Great. So the present application was submitted by Jane and Kevin White for the purposes of severing off an additional farm residence from 15. Well, the location of the property is 1539 Hawthorne Road, and the request is to sever that property off from the larger farm located on Pleasant Valley Road. So the severed lot will have 39 meters of frontage and a depth of 222 meters for a total of 1.15 hectares. And the retained lands have a frontage of 468 meters and a depth of 1,610 meters or 58 hectares. The subject lands right now on the severed parcel there is a residential dwelling already present, as well as a few outbuildings there was an old livestock pen there and a woodshed, and the land is wooded. And on the retained lands, it's primarily agricultural use. There's a small creek that bisects the property and some woodlands. And then there's a farm dwelling as well as livestock facilities closer to Pleasant Valley Road there. So in terms of access and servicing, both retained and severed parcels front onto municipal roadways and are both serviced by existing on-site water and sewage, private water and sewage systems. For the policy analysis, the provincial policy statement again supports rural development that sustains the rural character of areas and where servicing is appropriate. The provincial policy statement generally discourages creating new lots in agricultural areas. However, it is allowed, or the policy supports the severance of surplus farm dwellings following as long as the size of the lot is as minimal in size as possible, and that no new dwellings are permitted on the retained lands. So these are actually conditions of the this latter one is a condition of the application. For the County of Renfrew official plan, the land use designation is agricultural, which does prioritize the long-term agricultural uses and restricts non-agricultural development while also protecting parcel sizes. So the severed lot complies both the severed lot is minimal, is almost as minimal as we could. It's slightly like slightly over a hectare, but that is not a concern. And the agricultural uses are being maintained on the retained lands. So the, pardon me. So the land division policies require that the lot be suitable in nature for to allow for suitable soil drainage, water supply, as well as sewage disposal, and that. But again, as because of the existing private services, this is not a concern. I feel like my notes here are not matching up to my report. Natural heritage features. So the retained lands include a significant valley land, which is the creek, but no negative impact is expected from the severance, since there's actually no change, no developments being proposed. Everything already exists. In terms of the comprehensive zoning bylaw, the area is zoned agricultural, and both the severed and the retained lots comply with the sizing and the frontage, subject to the conditions of this report. And in terms of minimum distance separation, because the residents already exist and no intensification of the agricultural activities are proposed, the MDS is not needed at this time. So the rationale for approving these applications are that this is a surplus farm dwelling, and that it is maintaining. It is there already. It does maintain the rural character of the area, and we are taking the severance represents a minimal reduction of the overall farm size, and we're not actually removing any productive or land that's currently being used by the farm. So we're only removing woodlands. The retained lands will maintain their agricultural function, and the significant valley lands will not be negatively affected. So the conditions for this approval are that the two hard copies of the plan and one digital copy of the plan of survey need to be provided to the Secretary Treasurer, and that one digital copy be provided to the County of Renfrew. The applicants need to obtain a zoning bylaw to amend to reduce the lot frontage on the severed land, and to restrict future residential uses on the retained lands. And then they also need to provide us with the deed. In terms of engagement, the notices were circulated in accordance with the Planning Act, and no comments were received at the time of writing the report. The financial impact for the township is a new lot will be created, and there's some new tax revenue there. And my recommendation is that you approve the application subject to the conditions of this report. If that's what happens, then the next step is to issue a notice of decision.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience who would like to address this matter? Anyone online? Council have any concerns?
No comments. I support the application.
All right.
Okay.
All right. All in favor? Carried. All right. So that will conclude our meeting as the minutes cannot be approved at this meeting.
So I do need a motion to postpone those, so.
Oh, okay. May I have a motion, or I'm making a committee of adjustment? Postpone the minutes, the reading of the minutes from the October 17th, 2024 meeting. Carried. Okay. And that adjourns this meeting at 10:39 a.m. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.